So I'm moving on and I'm seeing a photo of a man. He's screaming. I don't know exactly what's happening here. But he's on the headset. And so he might be in the middle of giving commands out to his troops to bring him home. His name's Sergeant Tanner Higgins. And I see a common photo that you see a lot of times with soldiers, of silhouettes of soldiers with their weapons on their shoulders. A couple of them with grenade launchers, which was normal. You had a couple with grenade launchers on there, which we called the 203. And through the horrible experiences that you had sometimes overseas, one of the worst ones was somebody or your crew giving you all their weapons, and so you're sitting there 140-degree weather, miserable, and then all of a sudden your crew's got to go do something or get under a vehicle, and they hand you all their weapons, so now you got another 100 pounds wrapped around your chest, and you're slinking along, and they don't show that in photos. It's, you know, you're trying your best to keep everything out of the ground so it doesn't get dirty, so that everything works. And you're following these men to wherever they went to. You got to walk a whole lot slower than they do. When you finally arrive there, and you're like sweating, you can't experience what they just experienced. And they look at you and they say, "All right, time for chow." And they continue to walk without grabbing their weapons. And it was one of the worst feelings. It was so demoralizing, carrying somebody else's weapons across the desert. And you're screaming after them, and they're just having fun with you because you're the new guy. But in this photo of Higgins, I see a man that's giving commands to his troops. I see a hero trying to make sure that he brings people home. I see a man holding what I would say would be a parachute. Looks like he was possibly airborne or aerosol.
Yeah.
And I see a man that was in charge of guys, and he knew exactly what to do, and he was bringing his soldiers home. So to me, that's a hero. Sergeants with some dirt paths in between. It's a bunch of sub-governors that look at you and they tell you exactly what they want you to do at all times, and they will keep you safe. And if you are the sub-governor's friends, great. If you're not, sometimes they let the Taliban in to attack you. I see men of, humanitarian aid going on in a photo of Scott Burgess. And I see the humanitarian aid happening in a city, which a lot of people don't realize. They think Afghanistan. They see the photos of the men fighting out there, and they're like, that's all Afghanistan is. No, Afghanistan has cement roads. Sometimes you have to get in towards the big cities. And they have restaurants, and we don't have Starbucks over there, but we got green beans. And you want to travel to either Bagram, which was known as Disneyland overseas, or to a place called Kandahar. You would want to go to those places, and you would, grab your food, your drink, and you'd feel like you were actually achieving something. For maybe just a half a day, you were inside one of these two spots, and somebody offered you a cheeseburger, which you have no idea what was in that cheeseburger. It didn't taste like a cheeseburger, but it was one of the worst. It was the best cheeseburger overseas at the time. And you just wanted that. You just wanted that 2 hours of calm. That 2 hours to sit there in the middle of Bagram, in the middle of Disneyland. No one's bothering you. You're drinking water. You're hanging out with your friends. You don't have to worry about anything hitting you. They're incoming. If they get incoming to the base by the Taliban, it's like 9 or 10 miles. Sitting there for just 2 hours with your buddies, not having to worry about anything, and that's what we call refit. And so you would spend 2, 3, 4, 5 months out in the mountains doing what we needed to do, or in 1151, and then the next thing you know, they're telling you we got to go back for refit for 2 hours, which there's a story about the refit. We were coming home about a month, I would say closer to a month. And I had moved to a different location at the time. I had some problems with the first sergeant because of some of the calls that he had made. I felt that they weren't necessarily correct helping our soldiers, so we had our differences, and I had moved on. I had left my best friend at the time at the base, along with Peter Corsi, who is a Texan, is a native Texan. And they, a month before we were getting ready to come home, they got on the trucks to go back to a place called Salerno for refit. As they're traveling along, right outside the gate of Salerno, they ran into a buried IED. Nobody saw it. It exploded on Jason's side. It gave 2 men excessive burns away from the explosion. It killed Jason, and it killed Peter Corsi. That's how he passed. They were just going back for that 2 hours. And it's hard for me even now to talk about it with a straight face, even though it's been 10 years. It's just something that's common. You notice that you just start thinking, what if I was there? Why am I still here? That's a normal feeling for soldiers. And I'm not weak enough to say that I didn't need counseling when I came home, because I lost him. I never really got to say goodbye overseas until we came home. When we came home, right as we landed, they had a memorial service for Jason and Peter, and that's where I got to say my goodbyes. And I left a photo, my combat patch that I had earned, and a coin at the base of Jason and Peter's original resting place, which was Fort Campbell, Kentucky, until they left there and they were returned back to their parents. One of them in Louisiana, one of them in Texas. The other story about Jason too is, I'm sorry, I'm cracking up on the recording a little bit. I didn't think I was going to. I had told the person I was speaking to before this recording, it's been 10 years, but you never really realize what all the memories bring back at one time. But I'm seeing a photo now, a painting of Corsi. His name, of course, is Peter, so I'm gonna call him that. And I see a kid that, he was only 24 at that time. Jason was a little bit younger than him, a little bit younger than all of us. And I see in the corner, I see photos of 2 different men, kind of. I see a kid that he took his professional photo as an infantryman, and he's smiling, and he's like, yeah, Mom, I'm proud of what I do. He's wearing the Fort Campbell Eagle proudly. He's an infantryman, and he's wearing his blue cord, and he's really proud of it. And then I see a kid that went overseas. His smile was taken, as a lot of us were. He's hurt, he's dragging, and he's wearing a small little skull cap, which we all used to wear. I don't know why. It was 140 degrees, and we used to wear knit caps over our heads, and we would just sweat. But that was the best feeling in the world, to just get off of work and put on our knit caps. It was completely ridiculous. So we actually had tan lines for our knit caps and things like that. I just never understood why we did it, even to this day, but I still got my knit cap. And it was more comfort, I guess. And he's wearing what we call a waffle shirt. It wasn't a cold weather shirt, which was, again, completely ridiculous in Afghanistan. And he's wearing it, and he's relaxing, and he's probably sitting in front of a bonfire, which we used to do, and just staring off into space. But I see 2 different men in the photo. And knowing him personally, I see photos of him smiling with his baby in case which I'll show. And then I see the man that was just wanting to come home. Beat down, tired. The man that went to locations like Pawnee, DC, District Center that no one knows about because it got shut down and only had 100 people there, which got hit with improvised explosive devices all the time. People would try to ruin that place. A kid that, he was a leader. He was one of my good friends, and one that did not deserve the fate that was given to him. But I don't know if his family, even to this day, realizes how much of a hero he was, and how much of a hero Jason was. All right, we gotta get out of some of the sad stuff. So, you know, we're flipped sideways. We're seeing the country in Afghanistan, and it is a beautiful country from above. Until you get on the ground and realize that it's not so beautiful. But I got to ride on some helicopters and look down and see the region. But I'll never forget that we came home, and this is another funny story, and the gentleman that was flying, our pilot, he decided that he was gonna have a good old joke with us. So we rappelled from the helicopter, hovering above, we rappelled to the ground, and then I'm assuming he reversed velocity in his wings going the other way or something. Anyways, it caused a dust tornado while we're all on the ground. We're in the middle of this thing. And by the time we actually got out and went home, I swear I could have said the alphabet with the amount of sand that was in my mouth. And just everybody is laughing, we're joking, and we were having fun with each other. You know, we look up and he's giving us a high five. We were not happy with him. We were waiting for him to land, but it was fun. It was just the little things that you experience overseas. The next few photos that I see two Marines. One of them that is a devout Christian in some way, shape, or form. I see the Holy Bible. I'm Roman Catholic myself, so I understand that. One of the care packages I used to receive every single time I was over there was one from my mom. She made it every year, and I'd have my dog tags on, and in the dog tags I had to have a medal of my patron saint, St. Michael, with me at all times. And that brings me back to Jason. But the Holy Bible was really an attachment. A lot of people that went overseas that were non-religious, they found their religion across it because they were in shock that they thought they'd come from one country to another and experience the same thing. But from the moment they land in Kyrgyzstan or Kuwait, and an Air Force man opens up the C-130 bay door, and all of a sudden, within seconds, you're engulfed with this heat, this smell of garbage and sewage, and you realize you're not home anymore, and it's devastating for a lot of people. And then your lungs got to get used to the place. When you first, just to be normal, just drive a truck around sometimes. And then the next photo, right next to it, Thomas Hewitt, that's a rude awakening. So it goes from family and time that you get to spend together to driving up, never knowing where the next explosion is going to come from, driving up, having your men out there picking up others in an 1151. So combining these two photos together, you see truly what it's like in our lives. From 1 minute, a phone call can change your life. 1 minute you're having a beer and hanging out, having fun, and then the next minute you got rockets flying overhead and you're sitting there and hoping and praying that you can get back to the beer in the big truck. But I'll tell you, like, from my personal experience, I don't think I ever experienced a time when I was out there And when I was out there, I was not there. Like, you don't think about family back home. Everybody goes, I've always thought about you and I love you. And we say that to our families, but it's to obviously set them at ease. But while you're out there, you can't have them in your mind. You have to block them out or you're not coming home. And so it's hard. You know, you come back from those missions and things like that, and you call home, and you're like, hey, how are you? You hear about them spending $200 of your money on the greatest pair of shoes or whatever it is. And you look over and your uniform is melted down with sand. It could stand on its own. And it's hard because all you can say is, I hope you enjoyed the shoes. I love you. And we don't think of our family while we're out there. We try to spend our time with our family while we can, doing the morale phone calls and things like that, but you never realize, like, you'll be still thinking about out there while you're talking to your family. And so I truly believe that any soldier, any Marine, any service member that's been out there doesn't really, I guess, join his body until about 90 days after he's been home, because everything is still overseas. And if you lose friends, a piece of you will never come back. I remember my first deployment wasn't bad. I felt pretty normal. And then I went to my second deployment, and I lost a friend of mine over there, and it took a piece out of me, small piece. I did, firefights here and there, but it's a small piece. Then I went over to Afghanistan, and I expected Iraq when I arrived in Afghanistan, and it was completely different. And I don't think I'm ever going to come back from there. I lost a big piece of me. One memory the next photos of the cadets all being together that died, and even Thomas Hewitt, seeing the explosion there. Another memory is we were out on patrol, and we had this reporter behind us, and he was not following our steps. He was trying to get the best shot he could of us. Taking incoming fire, and this guy's standing up in the middle of it. One of my guys, he just got so upset because he was attracting fire that he ends up tackling this guy. And he's like, you need to stay down. And the guy looks at him and he goes, I'm just trying to catch the heroes on tape. And I remember looking at him and I said, there's not heroes today. There's men out here. We're just trying to go home. And it caused him to put his lamp out on we had night vision over top of his camera, and he finally put it out and the gunfire stopped. It was the guy's camera that was attracting the fire to us.
Oh, man.
But I see the cadets group that died together, but they died doing something that they loved. And they probably wouldn't have had it any other way. It's hard to die as a group, but these are also men that they probably worked with, women that they probably worked with for a long amount of time. And in their minds, even though you don't think about your family at that time, they were out there doing something that they loved, and they were thinking about each other. And that makes that makes an honorable person. You can't, the minute you can put down your family and think about the person next to you, it just changes a man. And even if one of these individuals had come home, his heart I know it would have been still there. His mind would have been still there. I don't know how much he or she would have had left when they came back. It's hard. I deal with it every day. I've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I've been diagnosed with a disease in my spine that is basically eating up my spine. The more work I do, physical work that I do, it chews up my spine and it chews up the discs in between. And so I'm on constant meds for that. I have many different metal parts in my body, diseases like that. I also have what they call a traumatic brain injury, which is something that is really not talked about these days. And I go back to Hewitt's photo, because on the bottom of it I was hit in a truck. And it's the same truck that's laying there, except I was the man this time outside of the truck on the turret, and which is up here. And from the truck, they killed a man in the truck. 3 of them survived. I got thrown from the truck, but when I did, I hit something that wasn't gonna just bow to me. It was solid metal, and I was knocked out for 3 days. Coma. It happened on the 28th of December of 2008, and I woke up the 1st of January of 2009. I'll never forget that feeling of, I just wanted to be out there with the guys again. That's all I wanted. And that's part of why I ended up being moved away from the unit with Jason and Peter when they passed. I ended up going to a place just to heal, which brings up another story of how I ended up an E7 in the Army. Was I was healing from this explosion. I was down there, and this guy calls me on the little Roshan phones and says, "There's a promotion board today. Are you going to be a part of it?" And I'm sitting there limping around, feeling sorry for myself. I'm sulking, but a lot of these soldiers were my friends. He said, "There's a promotion board today. Sergeant Major wants to see you today." And I said, "How the hell am I supposed to do all this? Going to a promotion board, I don't remember stuff. I got bruises everywhere." And he's like, "Sergeant Major doesn't care. Get in there." So I recite your NCO creed, which is 3 paragraphs of hell, no matter who you ask. But it means exactly what it's supposed to. It describes what we are as non-commissioned officers. And so I recite it to the best of my ability, and then he tells me to do an about face, which an about face, you're supposed to be able to plant your feet and completely whip around. I can't do that anymore. Yeah. And I couldn't do it. I was on the crutch. Except I wasn't gonna I was so angry that I had been called in there that I tried to plant my feet, and my crutch came out from under me, and I stood on my one good leg. I was absolutely so angry, and even to this day it angers me thinking about it. But I did the best I could, and when I turned around, just tears streaming down my eyes, and he asked me to do another one now. So finally, when I completed the second one and my crutches were completely on the ground, he looked at me and he said, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "I know this might cost me being promoted in the Army." I said, "But the only thing I'm really thinking right now is, damn, my leg hurts and I want to come across this table right now." And he looked at me and he goes, "That's the kind of leader I want." And so I was promoted to E6. You just got to keep going was the lesson there. Dig yourself out of the dirt. He was actually given it, from what I remember of the story. And he's driving it around the city like it's the best thing coming. You know, everybody else, I'm sure, is driving their brand new cars, and he's driving an up-armored Humvee. Or not even, I'm sorry, a soft-top Humvee, and he's driving it with pride. And I look at this photo, and I remember the guys. It's the representation of the guys and how we've transformed over the years, and the things that I experienced from the first deployment to the last one. The pieces of you that you lose. And just like the Humvee, it just keeps transforming. I'll never forget my deployments or the people that I lost across seas, but the truth is, if you handed me my life a second way and told me, here's your choices, you lead down this path and you follow your dreams, or you go into the military knowing the same memories you would do, knowing everything that happened, I would do it again. Even though this video sounds pretty sad, it's the true experiences of life, of what we experience across seas. It's not meant to be sad. All these men here in Texas that you see, this gallery, it should be celebrated. Their lives should be celebrated. I'm proud of having served with these guys. The piece of me that I left in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was not only there that I left it with those soldiers. And that's something you'll never feel again. So, am I proud to have served? Yes. Would I do it again? Yes. Would I serve with the same men? Yes. I'm very proud of having served in the Army, and I'm very proud to have served under the flag. God bless America. I'm outside the gate, my knee is bleeding, I'm injured. And I looked at him and I said, yes, sir. The only English he was able to get out was, my son, my son. And in his hand, he held his son's feet and his ankle. That was all that was left of his son. And I'll never forget that. There's a book that I meant to bring today called Embedded. I will also show them the link to this book. In this book, it is the reporter who wrote this book, and it has a day-by-day, month-by-month recount of the places that were hit by the Taliban, our experiences, when our district center got hit, and who died. So definitely, I would say, if anyone truly wants to know, he's the one that lived with us for quite some time. But take these memories as a true recount of something that you'll never see unless you've lived through the eyes of a serviceman or woman.